We have on the line with us Cynthia McKinney and Fernando Velazquez of Informativo Pacifica. Hello, hola.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
¿Cómo está? What's going on down there? Tell us, describe what's going on outside the little place you're holed up in Caracas.
Well, from a non-native speaker, just an observer's point of view, I just wanted to say that the entire place is closed. This is a National Day of Mourning. And so, but one of the things that was said to me last night I found amazing was Venezuela without Chavez is like Latin America without the sun.
Wow. Wow.
What it translated yesterday was over 2 million people came to pay respects to President Chavez. There were 7 very, very long lines of people. They all converged at one point at the entrance of the building where the coffin was laid to the public, and they were displaying in a major screen what the expressions of each person coming to pay respect to the president were, and it was just very, very educational. The level of respect, the level of sorrow and pain and militancy of the people one by one coming to stand there before Chavez to say goodbye to him. That was on the screen. On the outside, the statements coming from people, men, women, mostly women, the most militant of them all, talking about the wonderful things that he created, the missions, the programs, the social programs to benefit the homeless, to give people access to education, to access to medical care, and so on. People, women talking, referring to President Chavez as my brother, my father, my husband, my grandpa. Men, which is very unusual in Venezuela, saying, I love the guy, I love this president, I love this man, and talking about the wonderful things that he did for his people in terms of helping them regain self-respect as a nation, to be a sovereign nation that decides its own destiny without outside interference. That was very telling of the statements coming out of people yesterday.
It's amazing, and it's not just what he did for Venezuela, but the entire global South and by projection, humanity, because just a few weeks ago in Equatorial Guinea, for example, the conference there, there's a whole new economic, like a global economic structure that's being developed from the ground up. That's part of the process that he was very instrumental in setting into motion. ALBA countries, all of that.
One of the things that I would like to say, because I'm studying this kind of phenomenon, assassination events, from an academic point of view, is that there have been studies about what happens to social movements, what happens to countries when their leadership is assassinated. And I've been reading reports from U.S., pro-U.S., U.S., pro-Israel intelligence agents, former intelligence agents who now have formed various corporations. And what they are predicting is a period of chaos. In fact, there's been studies that have projected that, once something like this happens, there can be expected 12 years of chaos, which is what we're experiencing with the so-called Arab Spring. But now, how can you mitigate that? And even though these particular think tanks are predicting that Venezuela will go through a period of infighting and chaos as well, one of the things that prevents that is to have a clear line of succession. And of course, that is very key here, and there is a clear line of succession. With that, With
right.
that having been institutionalized, then the opportunity for mischief making and chaos is diminished greatly, and the revolution, the Bolivarian revolution, does not have to end just because Chavez is not here.
What is about to happen in the remaining of the day, besides heads of state and representatives from over 50 countries being here to pay respect to President Chavez, is the ceremony in which the vice president will become the president of Venezuela. Nicolás Maduro will be the president of this country at the end of the day.
Right.
And then the country will run for a period of time enough for him to call on to new elections, at which point, when he announces his candidacy as the president, when he runs for president of Venezuela, then the president of the National Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, will become the head of state, the president, while Nicolás Maduro is running for office. So that begins today.
There are two things. One, on the point of the succession, you have this new constitution that was drafted from the ground up with, people's assemblies gathering to, make recommendations and then moving up a whole food chain. So this constitution is a creature of the people, really. And you can't have much more validity in the people's eyes than that. And have the example of how the vice president and the president of the National Assembly and the people acted during the 2002 coup, when Chavez was arrested and taken to an island out of the way. When the vice president and the president of the National Assembly made their way to the presidential palace, and the palace guards backed the legitimate government, the head of the National Assembly deferred to the vice president, who was the president pro tem, and they worked together to reestablish control over the country, and then handed it back to the president when the president was released. It's perfect.
Well,
with the people in the street enforcing this.
The other thing that grabbed my attention, talking to people, to Venezuelans coming from all over the country. In fact, people didn't stop walking by President Chavez because the day ended. In fact, they did it through the night, last night. And what did change in the last few hours is that today was supposed to be the ceremony in which what we know as the funeral, and to deliver President Chavez to the place of rest, his physical body. It turns out, because of the incredible demand of people wanting to spend more time with their president instead of just 1 second and just being walked out of the way because hundreds of thousands of others wanted to be there too. They extended the period of visitation for 7 days.
Yes.
And they announced that the president will have the president's body will have a temporary stay until the body is prepared and placed in a place where it will remain very much like you would say, like Lenin or like Mao Zedong, at the same with the same process of preservation of the physical body, and at the same time being accessible to the people in a public building.
Fernando, how are you? This is Bernard. How's it going?
Abana.
Okay. That change there, that making, accommodating the people, that seems to be a real indication of how deeply entrenched this new idea the Bolivarianism is in Venezuela, that it would be very difficult at this time to reverse that because it's so firmly entrenched in the people.
Exactly. And a single mother gave it to me yesterday in a very succinct kind of way. She said, "Now I have a home for my children. Now I can send my kids to school." And that That is Chavismo. It's not a man talking on Aló Presidente and television. Chavismo is making sure that people have their needs satisfied and fulfilled now, not someday in a hollow promise, but right now. And that's Chavismo, and people truly understand that, especially not only people who had little or nothing before, whose rights were not respected before, but also the place, Venezuela has a place, a dignified, respectable place under the sun. This is the president that challenged President Bush right inside the United States of America in a New York United Nations session where he called him the devil, not because he used that adjective, a description of Bush, but the courage, the balls that it took for a head of state from another country of Latin America to go to the United States and call it as it is. Okay? But then it's the other things that Chavez did, getting these incredible bilateral relations with China, with Russia, with Iran, with other members of the Eastern European bloc, getting together with all the Muslim countries, bringing them together to Latin America, getting all the African heads of state, bringing them together twice already to find ways to get people out of underdevelopment, away from the crowds, away from the control of the imperial nations, and to make sure that people of the South get the respect that they need. And Chavez has been very instrumental in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I would just also like to say that I spent the better part of the evening yesterday with a gentleman from Haiti. And he reminded me, of course, it was wonderful to be able to speak French since I don't speak Spanish. He reminded me that Chavez loved Haiti. And, of course, we remember that Chavez went to Haiti to say thank you because the tricolor Venezuelan flag was first raised not on Venezuelan soil, but on Haitian soil. And as I was standing in the lobby of the place that we are now, there's a notice of a law, an organic law against racial discrimination that's posted in the lobby of this place. And the Haitian, I asked the Haitian, how are you treated here? Of course, most of the people, one of the, how can I say, most touching things that happens to me, even though I'm from the United States, when I open my mouth, people know. But if I don't open my mouth, people think I'm Venezuelan, which is very important. But the Haitian told me last night, no discrimination at all here. There is no discrimination. So we can see what a country, a society can do in terms of human relations when there is will at the top and there's will throughout the body politic to effectuate that kind of change. The fact that we don't have it in the United States is glaring, and it tells us a lot about the kind of leadership that we have, or lack of leadership, or in other words, misleadership, as Glenn Ford calls it.
Hey, Cynthia, how are you?
Hi, Bernard.
Okay. It also shows the level of self-determination and independence that you can have when you are in control of your resources.
That's absolutely right. And the stark difference that you see here, all with the constitutional process, which of course was chronicled very well by the Irish journalists in The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, but it's something that's lacking on the African continent. And I've had many Africans ask me, why aren't we treated like the Asians? Why aren't we treated, now they could say even like the Latin Americans? Let me also just say, as I think about it, that the United States reactivated the Fourth Fleet, and we don't know exactly what the reason was, but it portends gunboat diplomacy. And the United States historically has had a policy of rollback. So where the people moved forward, the policy of the United States was to move those gains, to roll those gains back. And we have seen a little bit of that with the what happened in Honduras, what also, happened in Paraguay. And so what we, the people inside the United States, have a responsibility, a big responsibility. Our backs are against the wall in terms of domestic policy, but we've got to stand up against and resist what is happening in domestic policy, and also this policy of rollback to allow the people to have the right of self-determination and the enjoyment of human rights that they enjoy in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the Fourth Fleet, of course, is the U.S. Southcom. That's the Southern Command that covers the Caribbean and the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans around Central and South America.
As you walk through the streets and you talk to the people, is there a common theme, something that emerges from most of the conversations that you've had?
It is the spirit of Chavez, as relevant as Simon Bolivar. People know about Simon Bolivar because of so many speeches, so many books, so many magazines, so many stories told. President Chavez himself many times. People have become so acquainted to Simon Bolivar's thinking, his vision of a liberated America, because remember, America is not a country, it's a continent, as a liberated America. And that the spirit, that vision, it was in the eyes of Simon Bolivar, it was a promise to the Latin American nations, mostly South American nations at the time when Spain was calling the shots here. But now that vision has translated into international alliances with other political, military, economic blocs. From the standpoint of the people, they see themselves as being freer, more sovereign. They can control their resource, or as one woman put it yesterday, we can control our oil. This is our oil. We were able to retrieve our property, our oil, she said. And Chavismo, even though it reflects a lot of Simon Bolivar's thinking, promoted and repeated by Chavez, at the end of the day, people understand Chavismo because of the charms. This morning, they had a panel of people from the countryside, educators, nurses, people who take care of the medical needs of people, and one by one, they even have an Olympic champion talking about how Chavez took the time to make a phone call. Hi, how are you? How's your family today? Just took the time to make sure that children not only had access to sports, but also were well fed, that the people who were unemployed find a place to work, and the people had schooling, and the people had access to sports, and the nurse put it all together. You know, Chavez provided a people's health. It was, maybe Chavez means something different for each Venezuelan, because he affected his life differently. You know, the woman we're talking about his identification with sports, talking about how much he loves sports and how much he cared about developing the physical and the psychological well-being of the people of Venezuela. And while the farmers, the guy that was moving, he was the representative from the farmers this morning, he was talking about how Chavez was able to remind the people of the city, the people of Venezuela, of how hard the small businessmen, the peasants do work every single day so they can put food on the table of the people of Venezuela. That was very, very moving.
You know, a lot of the dynamism that came out of Venezuela was because Chavez was such a charismatic leader. What about institutionally? From what you know, are the institutions or things that were instituted, have they been institutionalized? Have they, do they have a history beyond the benevolence of a charismatic leader?
There's three levels there. The cohesiveness of the judicial, of the legislative, and the executive are very, very, very independent and yet cohesive in terms of the vision of their new country, the Bolivarian Revolution. That's one component, and that in itself it has its own institutions. But then is the other, they call the missions, the whole movement, the mechanism to provide people's health, or to provide people's education, or provide people a home. Those the people from the grassroots who volunteer to be part of that mission, is what it's called. That lives on. That in itself is a body of its life of its own. With or without Chavez, that thing, it will continue going because it's very solid, very well structured, very well organized, and for the first time, people from the bottom, the majority of the Venezuelans, have the ability to control what happens around them and to make their lives better on a daily basis. And that's really the role of the missions. That goes beyond what anybody can say about Chavez on the outside.
Has there been much talk about how this all came about, how just the rapidity of his deteriorating health?
No, actually, not much. Not much more than what. Not on the talk shows, not on the people conversations on the streets, but more people reflecting on what Vice President Maduro said about having an investigation about what went down, how he became ill, and that's what people like to engage in a conversation, because it's not just Nicolás Maduro, the vice president, thinking that something, it was not a national occurrence that Hugo Chavez got sick. They suspect it was more of somebody trying to get rid of a head of state. And that's what the investigation is calling for, and I guess it's going to be more conversations about it later on.
Well, while you have Cynthia there with her expertise on exactly that topic, it might be a good idea for it to be useful to them. Well,
she's going either this evening or tomorrow. We're going to go to studios, recording studios of one of the local, actually it's a national radio network. I'm sure that's going to come out.
Good. So, what next? Where are you guys headed?
We're gonna go to the military academy, then we're gonna go to the National Assembly for the ceremony in which the vice president will become the president of Venezuela.
Beautiful. So, call in from when you get to the next spot, and we'll talk with you again on the air.
The very next time we have access, we will definitely connect with you.
Don't be afraid of the telephone, and before you hang up, I'm going to Skype you Bernard's phone number and mine, so and then you'll know which one to call into.
Okay, and I would like to say thank you to you, the guys at CPR Metro, for making my visit here possible. You, Don, you, Bernard, and of course, thank you to Errol as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for being there, and thank you for everything that you do, both of you.
Take care.
Okay, thank you very much.
Viva Venezuela, mi patria querida, quien la libertó mi hermano fue Simón Bolívar. Viva Venezuela, mi patria querida, quien la libertó mi hermano fue Simón